Streaming's hard, guys. It takes some practice to get used to. I'm much more comfortable editing videos and making my content that way, but I love doing live streams. I love sharing stuff with you guys, and part of the reason I'm doing this tonight is because it's my 30th birthday. Hooray! Happy birthday to me. So I've got something really special that I wanted to break out for my birthday. I'm going to be tasting this Barrell rye. This is some serious heat. This stuff is 77%, almost 76.97% alcohol, and it's 14-year-old rye whiskey from Barrell, selected by Big Red local liquor store. Now, there's been some speculation about why this whiskey is such a high proof. I think the best answer I've heard about what's going on with this whiskey is that it's actually light whiskey that has been aged for 14 years. Now, light whiskey is sort of a term that's thrown around a lot, and people don't always know what it means. In this context, light whiskey is essentially a product that has been distilled at a higher proof than regular whiskey before it's put into the barrel. Now, Trevor, I believe this is actually coming from MGP. I've heard mixed things about it. I'm not certain where this is coming from, but I will say that people are speculating that this stuff is coming out of the still at higher than 160 proof. Typically, 160 is where you're going to, below 160 is what you're going to be putting into the barrels, I believe. If it goes above that, then you're making neutral grain spirits, most likely. But in this case, we've got a rye whiskey that, instead of being turned into neutral grain spirits, was aged for 14 years as a whiskey, sort of an in-between point between regular whiskey and neutral grain spirits, which is just basically vodka. You can make vodka out of almost anything. So, it'd be easy to make a vodka out of whiskey ingredients, but this sort of hits the nice middle ground. So what I've got here lined up is a couple of interesting things. So obviously the barrel, I'm going to review that today on this live stream. And then I've got this, which is the barrel. I poured this out a couple hours ago on Facebook. This is been sitting open to the air for a couple hours. Now, part of why I did that was alcohol evaporates if you leave it into the air. I've talked a lot on my channel about the effects of leaving a bottle open and having, some amount that's not totally full. Even with the cap on, the whiskey is going to have a reduction in its heat level. It's going to change oftentimes in its flavor profile, and that's basically because the alcohol begins to evaporate and lowers the proof in the juice itself. So this particular pour that's been sitting out for a couple hours, it should be something really good and interesting, but it's going to probably be very different from the pour coming straight out of the bottle. Now, I kind of wanted to be able to do one where the pour coming straight out of the bottle was from an unopened bottle, the neck pour, so to speak, because then there's going to be no evaporation. And although it's only been open a couple hours and I've only taken out one pour, that little bit does offer the chance for a little bit of evaporation. People often have strong feelings about neck pours in bottles, so I kind of wanted to do that, but just for practicality's sake, it wasn't going to be possible. I'm really happy to be able to do it this way, and still have a side-by-side of something that's been sitting out for over 2 hours now, 2.5 hours, and something that's coming straight out of a bottle where it's had very little chance to evaporate. Now, back to the camera, bad form. What is this, you might ask? This is, I'm going to rotate us a little bit, see if I can't turn that light down a bit. Okay, this is a sample I received from one of the Facebook groups. I mentioned before in the failed version of this stream that the Barrell rye program, making these super high proofers, I first found out about it from a sample from a Facebook group, and this is that sample. I've had a lot of it, as you can see, but I saved some because I was hoping I'd have a chance to do something like this. This is a Barrell rye. Let's see if you can see that. Yeah, you can see it. This was at 70 proof. So what I've got up here today is 77. This was 70. But this was from the Houston Bourbon Society. They did a barrel pick of the Barrell Ryes, and this was their 13-year cask pick that was 70%. Now, what I've got up here is a 14-year cask strength Barrell Rye at 77%. So I think it'll be really fun to do a side-by-side and see who got the better bottle. Did Big Red Liquors get it, or did the Houston Bourbon Society, pick the better barrel? So this is going to come up later, but first I just want to try in its purest form this barrel right out of the glass. So let's go ahead and pour myself a little bit of the Barrell Rye. Now, if you guys have any questions, any comments, you want to tell me what a dumb asshole I am, whatever you want to say, put it in the comment section, put it in the chat. I read the chat. Hopefully you don't think I'm a dumb asshole. No. Well, maybe I am a dumb asshole after I just spilled this on myself. It's 7 minutes into the live stream and I'm a mess already. That seems right, though. Wear a little bit of this as a cologne. So, this is okay. I've got a very makeshift setup right now, you guys, and everything just shifted all at once. So, we'll keep an eye on that. If you fall to the ground, no, I'll pick you back up and you can keep watching. I'm not going anywhere. What was I saying? Oh yeah. So this pour is actually Canadian rye. I think that's important to note. I initially had mentioned thinking this was MGP. I see Trevor in the chat mentioned this was Dickel. It wouldn't be either because this is being distilled in Canada. The place that I know that's distilling the most in Canada would be Alberta Premium. I'm not sure if this is from Alberta or not, but I do know I've had Alberta Premium cask strength. A good friend, Josh, sent me a sample of that, and it was just fantastic. I'm hoping to have a review of that on the channel later. Matter of fact, I'm hoping to get a bottle of that later, but that's in the very much in the future. So this, though, is much higher proof than what I've tasted from Alberta. And older as well. So I'm not sure how I'll feel about this, but let's give it a nose straight out. Hey, good. Uncle Dave doesn't think I'm a dumb asshole. Good. I don't really either, but it's funny. It's comedic effect. So for something that's 77% alcohol, I would expect it to just kick your ass. I would expect you put your nose in the glass, you take a whiff, and it's just overwhelming. But it really doesn't do that at all. And I think that's kind of attributing to the idea that this might be a light whiskey. But, I don't know enough about how Canada does their distillate that maybe there's something, some different regulations up there and they are able to put higher percentage of alcohol into barrels and not call it light whiskey. I have some light whiskey around here somewhere. I've put it up. I had to make room for this little lineup, but Obtainium light whiskey, I've actually got a sample of it here. I'm going to do a side-by-side in a later date of this sample of Obtainium light whiskey with a different one of their batches, just do a batch-to-batch comparison. But light whiskey is out there and labeled as such. This is not that. Now, on the nose, you definitely get some, like a medicinal quality. There's definitely a sweetness. It's very sharp. Everything's very sharp and tinny. I think because it's such a high proof, it's going to be hard to avoid that kind of sharpness. I mean, I'm really honestly impressed already by the nose of this not smelling like straight pain. At 77%, I certainly expected that. It's got a really interesting grain component. It's soft and sweet and definitely a rye. But the sweetness is sort of like, if you've ever had a 100% wheat whiskey, a lot of times those can be very sweet, but not in a corn way. It's a grain sweetness that isn't a corn sweetness. And the best way I can describe it is that corn sweetness can tend to be a little bit broader. You either get a flavor of corn or you're going to get sort of a width where the corn ends up making something like a brown sugar or a molasses or a honey flavor. They're all broader flavors, and noses as well as flavors. Scents, that's the word. But this has a very narrow sweetness. It's unmistakably like a sweet grain. And for something that's 14 years, it smells relatively young. I think, again, because it's so high proof, it's probably in the light whiskey category. Now, I keep using that term and keep talking about that, but I think the important thing to remember when you talk about light whiskey, something that's distilled at such a high proof, what essentially is happening is when you distill a spirit that high, a lot of other components that make up the flavors are stripped away. It's not just the grains and just the alcohol that make up the flavors. There are esters, there are a lot of other compounds that I can't pronounce. All of those things make flavor profile for a whiskey. It's one of the reasons that copper stills are very common, and they'll have one pot that drips into the catching container. What that is doing is really capturing a lot more flavor components. So a lot of times if you see pot still whiskey, it's going to have more variety in the flavor profile. Whereas column still whiskey, sometimes called coffee stills, because Mr. Coffee invented them or claims to have invented them. There's some debate about that. Anyway, the coffee stills, because of the way they work and with these columns, they make specific cuts. So your spirits are going to have specific levels of heat where they are starting and ending. So part of the importance of doing this is that it allows you to get rid of the methanol. When you're doing distillation, you're making ethanol, which is what you drink and get drunk on, and methanol, which is poisonous and can kill you. That's one of the reasons moonshine is always kind of seen as this dangerous thing, because if you don't make it right, it can be very deadly. Happily, though, the cure for methanol poisoning is often ethanol. So anyway, the reason I'm going off on the column stills, the coffee stills, is those specific cut lines make a very narrow flavor palette. The profile gets narrower. And that's one of the reasons some people in the Scotch world, kind of in the Irish whiskey world, they think less of bourbon because they think of the palette as being too narrow, because a lot of bourbon is made with column stills. So part of that process also is stripping away some of these other flavor components. And just imagine expanding that stripping away. That's what you're doing when you're making a light whiskey, when you're making this high proof product. So as I let this kind of sit here with me a little bit, it's getting, the sweetness is widening up a little bit. It's starting to give a little bit of honey note to it. Still very much a grain sweetness. The rye is very prominent. I'd seen a couple people talk about pears being a predominant note. I've seen people talk about apple being a predominant note. I get a little bit of citrus, just a hint of like maybe like a mandarin, something that's very sharper than an orange, but still has an orange component. But it's very subtle. There's definitely also that kind of what they would call a stone fruit, an apple, a pear. Those things are referred to as stone fruit. I don't know why, but so does that bring out more barrel note versus the distillate note? A lot of what comes in from the barrel will vary based on the distillate that's going into it. But I would say that something that's had 14 years in a barrel, a lot of what you're going to be getting out of this is going to be barrel note, because there's not going to be a lot of flavor elsewhere. 14 years in a barrel, using light whiskey that doesn't have a lot of the other flavor components, you're going to be getting a lot more from the wood. That would be my assumption. I've never acted as a master distiller, so I'm not certain. But based on what I've tasted in the past, so much of the flavor profile of whiskey is coming from the barrel, especially with older whiskeys. I'm being informed that apples aren't stone fruits. Stone fruits have pits, hence the stones. I think you call it what you want and be happy about it. I'm really sitting here with this. I know I'm taking a lot of time on the nose on this, but It's evolving so much, and I want to make sure I really give you guys some good notes on it. It's so high proof, it kind of stings the nostrils in a really fun way, though. All right, I'm going to taste it now. Here we go. Yeah. Yeah, that's high proof. Whew. Whew. Oh, I get that hug, too. The Kentucky hug where it burns down your throat and into your chest. You just feel the warmth throughout all of you. Oh, yeah, I'm getting that here. So, definitely getting this that bitter barrel note in the mid palate, very prominent. Talking before about how, I suspect the barrel will be a strong component of the flavor in this. Definitely seems to be thus far. I'm really getting that sharp bitterness, almost like a bitter chocolate on the mid palate and the finish. It really lingers. The bitterness really stays with you on this pour. Very bitter. First thing out of the gate, though, is sweet. Right away, sweet, slightly fruity, slightly floral. More fruity than floral. And then, whoosh, comes in this rush of heat, burn on the tongue. Definite wood note. A little bit of some sort of baking spice, but not a traditional one. It's not cinnamon, it's not nutmeg, it's not clove. Oh man, I need to raid the spice cabinet to figure out what that is. There's a bitter, maybe like man, I don't know. Medurum, maybe? Or however you say that. I've only ever seen that written. There's a couple of different herbs that you would use in baking that really kind of hit or not in baking, but in cooking rather, that really hit the mid palate. Hey, what's up, Joe? It's not anise. Yeah, it's definitely got an herbal mid palate. It's a hint of sweet up front. I heard people talk about the pears. I understand that. I think I would probably call it maybe like kind of a combination, maybe like a red delicious apple skin. You get that bitterness, that sharpness, alongside with the sweetness of like a pear. Now going back to the nose. It's gotten a lot hotter, but now I'm getting some more traditional baking spices on the nose. I think I would call that a ginger, actually. I'm getting like a cinnamon and a ginger. It's very prominent and sharp, and it's not going to be a gentle flavor at 77%. There's no way, but I don't taste a soul, Joe. No souls in this whiskey. Probably for the better. It's really warming up to me. Maybe because it's such a high proof, it takes some time with it. It becomes a little bit more gentle and a little bit more palatable. But I think it's very woody. It's the bitter barrel. You get this like bog old wood flavor. Definitely you can taste it. It's been in a barrel. God, and the finish on this is forever. You get sweetness, you get the bitterness, you get this heat, you get a pepper flavor. There's a lot going on in the finish in this pour. Ooh. It's still sticking with me, and I haven't had a drink in several minutes. Or maybe not several minutes, maybe several seconds, but it sticks with you for a long time. And this shit is strong, 77%. Hot damn. Now, I think what I want to do next is compare what I was just drinking to the barrel pour from the same bottle that's been sitting out for a couple hours. But before I do that, I want to tell you guys about something. If you aren't already subscribed and if you aren't already a member of the Patreon, please subscribe and please join up with the Patreon. If you join before April 1st, you get a special present as part of your package deal. I've got a rendering here with me of the lapel pin that's going to be one of the special presents welcoming the founding members. Now, what is this Patreon? Patreon is just an easy place for you to get additional content. If you like what I'm doing on YouTube, I'm putting out even more stuff on the Patreon. It's a way to help support artists as well. It's a monthly fee. You can go as little as $3 a month. I have levels all the way up to $1,000 a month, which is mostly a joke, but if somebody paid it to me, I would take it. But it's a great way to support artists. You're basically buying me a cup of coffee every month, and it helps me out immensely. But if you do it before April 1st, you're a founding member of the Society of Drinking Professionals. And this is a nice rendering of the pin that you will get. Now, this is obviously bigger than regular size, given how it's almost the size of my head. But this is the kind of thing I'm going to be producing. Shout out Yolanda, my girlfriend and graphic designer, at Artist Yolanda on Instagram for helping design that. That's going to be the lapel pin that you can have access to when you join. Yeah, cool. Thanks, Joe. So if you join the Patreon now, you can get, really cool access to extra content, extra, we're going to have one-on-one interviews, monthly live streams that are just for Patreon users. You get a lot more access to me than you will from streams like this. We're going to have special reviews that are only done up there. Like I did a Lafroig 25 for the Scotch fans. That's a hard pour to find, so that was a fun review. But it's only on Patreon. So it's worth checking out. Thank you so much if you are already joined. I know a couple people in the chat are. Thank you so much. Please consider supporting me. And like I said, if you do it before April 1st, you can get this sweet lapel pin. That logo, that logo is going to be showing up a lot more around here because I think it's a really cool logo. I think it really speaks to what I'm all about. It's clean, it's sharp, and it's ready to drink like a professional. So that's all. I just, don't want to plug for too long, but the support from the Patreon has meant the world to me. You guys are the best fans. It makes this all. It's the reason I do this. It's the reason I spend my birthday with you all here doing a live stream is because you guys are great. I love you, and it's so much fun to drink with friends. So enough of that. Now let's do a side by side. Again, this is the just poured. This is the out for 2 hours. Oh, yeah, Trevor, just good shout out, Trevor. So Patreon has a new feature called Lens, which is a lot like what you see at the top on Instagram, the stories. But with Lens, I can set things up that are only going to Patreon users. So I can send you special videos and special content. Trevor's referencing that recently on Patreon, I put up a little discussion of where I live in Indianapolis and the city and kind of showing you the area. Because I think it's kind of fun to share not just the whiskey world, but a little bit else about who I am and what I do and what I'm about. So that kind of stuff is also up on Patreon. It's a little bit deeper dig into my life. Now, it's a lot more muted in this glass that's been open for almost 3 hours, which I totally expect. But what I didn't expect is it's way less sweet. The sharp sweetness was very predominant on the nose on the initial pour. But this one, is much a wider sweetness. I talked a little bit before about the narrow sweetness versus the wide sweetness. This one's much wider. It's a sweet rye grain. It's like honey and rye. It's like honey and rye bread or something. It's very bready as well. I'm getting that apple note again. Still not getting much on the pear side. I mean, I can see why somebody would call it pear, but I wouldn't consider it a pear. Pear to me is a very distinct flavor. There's a lot of different apples in the world, you know. Maybe there's a lot of pears too. Maybe I just haven't explored my pear palate sufficiently. Do these look any different? Not really. Haven't had a visual change, thankfully. But yeah, I mean, 77% alcohol. This thing is certainly going to change. This one's been sitting out for 3 hours. Definitely going to be something worth tasting. Wow. It's so different. You're still getting that sweetness. You're still getting the grain. But almost all that barrel bitterness is gone. It's tamed down so much. And you get that wave of heat. And you get the sharp pepper on the tongue. But the barrel bitter mid-palate is non-existent. That's really incredible. That I did not expect that. That's very cool. Yeah, softer, sweeter grain on the nose is just fantastic. It's not as fruity either. You know, the initial hit with the one that was fresh poured, fruit, and then immediately sharp alcohol, barrel bitter into the finish. This one, hints of the barrel, definitely woodiness in the mid palate, but the beginning is much more like bready grain sweetness, much like the nose, with hints of apple. And then it kind of evolves into this slightly woody, peppery, with a hint of maybe, hold on. You get the woody and the peppery, a hint of the cocoa bitter, but it's much less bitter. It's much broader in its sweet flavors. That's really cool. It's really cool to see how those two side by side are different. So I'm going to have a drink of water. And then I think the next step is to bust out the Houston Bourbon Society's 70% 1 year younger pick from Barrell. That's also a Canadian rye. I think it's Canadian. I vaguely remember looking at the photo of the actual bottle. Right now, all I have is this, but it actually had a really cool sticker on it. I wish Big Red would do some fun stickers, but what are you gonna do? The sticker showed this skull with a snake coming out of it, and it was like it kind of was like hazmat poison. It was fun. Now, I do have a review of this Barrell Rye 140 upcoming. It may be actually the one that I send out for Sample Sunday this week, if it's not already out. It's hard to keep track of which ones I've done that are out and which ones aren't, but I don't think this one's out. So this might be my Sample Sunday. But it's whoa. So worth noting, see how not full this bottle is? And it's been in here for a while. I've had it for a long time, and I've had it maybe 6 months. So it's had a lot of time to evaporate. But if I go to the nose now, it is straight up Granny Smith apple. Granny Smith apple. It smells like an apple orchard. And these are going to be very different notes. I'm going to note right off the top from what I did on my sample when I do a review then, because I've primed my palate with 77 proofers, and I did a side-by-side with two 77% whiskeys. So now I'm going down 7% to only barely hazmat at 70%. This is probably even less than that, given how much time it's had to evaporate. But nonetheless, it's nowhere near as hot as the as either of these two. And so much fruitier. There's no other sweetness. It just smells like a bundle of apples. It's got all the smells of an apple orchard. So it's got the sweetness of the apple. It's got that kind of like bitterness of the apple skin. It's got the smell of earth, just very slightly, but like the dirt around in nature. It's got the smell of the trees and the blossoms. There's a slight floral note. Wow. So after smelling this, I'm going to go back to the one that was 3 hours out of the bottle. Ooh, okay. So after going to this one that was all apple, I really get the pear out of this now. This is apple orchard. This is cooked pear. And I say cooked because it does smell like it's been kind of boiled down into some sort of concentrate. And I'm getting more baking spice on the nose on this one. Let's see the one that was just poured out of the bottle. See, this one is still very neutral. Coming back over to this, all apple orchard. Earth, roots, apples, sweet. Ooh, okay. I'm almost getting like... If you've ever had a custard cream pie, kind of getting that on the nose on this one. The fruitiness hasn't come out. I don't know what it is. Something about leaving these out for a while, letting them, evaporate a bit, brings the fruit notes out. But the one that hasn't had that chance, it's still pretty sweet, but it's not fruity at all. It's a narrow custard. That is what it is. It's a custard sweetness. All right. So let's go ahead and taste the one from the Houston Bourbon Society. No sweetness on the front. It smells like an apple orchard. It tastes like an apple root, an apple tree root. Earthy, bitter, very little, if any, sweetness. God, it still smells like a fucking apple tree, though. Oh, man. Now, is that better than either of these? It's hotter. It's more bitter. Oh, yeah. I think I got a lot of questions. So Joe asked, is it good and does the smell versus taste disappoint? I definitely prefer the smell on all three of these to the taste. The taste is not as good. It's much more barrel forward, which is not really my vibe. Some people love that chewing on an oak stave flavor. I don't. I like the fruitiness. So I was kind of lulled into this false sense of security thinking, oh, this will be nice and fruity. And then I tasted it and it tastes like wood. It's okay, but it is disappointing. Trevor asks, which has more of an effect, leaving out for a few hours or adding some water? We are going to test that very shortly. I want to complete the side-by-side, but that is the next step, Trevor. You're getting ahead of me, man. Cheers. Just reminding myself of the Houston Barrel Society pick. Bourbon. I keep wanting to say Barrel Society. Bourbon Society pick. This is the one that is not left out. I think I like this one better. I think I prefer the nose on the Barrel Society, but I prefer the taste on the Big Red. There's a lot more fruitiness and sweetness right up front. Now the mid palate comes in with some heat, a lot of heat actually, a lot of pepper. It hits hard, man. 77% is no fucking joke. But the flavors are much more interesting and complex and evolve more. This is just oak, barrel, stave, boom. This is fruit, wood, pepper, nuttiness, roots and herbs and earth. A lot happening there. Third, this is the open to the air Big Red Pick. Yeah, see, the sweetness is gone. Interesting. So the one of these I like the most is the one that on the palate is the one that has just been poured out of the bottle, which is not at all what I expected. You know, something at 77%. I figured this is going to be too hot. This isn't going to be, you know, right for drinking. You're going to need to cool this off. You're going to need to change the flavor on this. Honestly, I think it's meant to be drank at cask strength. It's meant to be drank at 77%, which is really uncommon. It's very weird. You'd expect this to be something that, you know, we're going to set it out to you to water down. And we will try watering it down significantly and see if the significance of watering down something, not just a couple drops, a real water down. See if that makes a difference. But in terms of just, you know, having time to aerate, having time to breathe, it does not serve this whiskey well. This whiskey is best when you can get to that sweetness, you can get to those spices, and that's right off the bat before anything has happened to it. I purchased this bottle really kind of as a gimmick. I thought it was fun to have something that stupid high proof on the shelf. But honestly, the stuff that I just poured out of the bottle, I really like this. I like it better than I like either of the other two. It's not as woody. It's sweeter, more complex. Let's see what happens when we add some water, shall we? Water. Now, I've got a lot of whiskey in front of me. A lot of high proof whiskey in front of me, too. Boop. Yeah. So, what do I do? What do I do? I think my best move here is to add, like, let's do 6 drops. Let's add 6 drops to each of these. There you go. I cut off my head now. Let's add 6 drops to each of these and just see how I feel about that. Now, I tried to keep these about the same amount in terms of whiskey in each glass. I think I succeeded in that with one exception. Let me fix that real quick. I will say when I first poured the for Facebook the Big Red Pick from Barrell, I poured it just to figure out what it was, you know, just to give it a chance to breathe, and it was exactly 1.25 ounces my pour. I'm guessing what I ended up with after tasting and letting it breathe and what have you is probably about an ounce. So my assumption is I've just added 6 drops to approximately an ounce of whiskey. And we're going to keep doing that until something happens. What's going to be the test subject? Let's test the middle one. Yeah. Yeah. See? Now the middle one tastes like the others. It's not as good. It's meant to be drank at 77%, guys. I never in my wildest dream would have said that, but it is. It's meant to be drank at 77%. Real fucking hot and crazy. Weird. Still smells like apple orchard. So this is going to be the lightest one, or the lowest proof one, rather. And it actually is pretty good. The sweetness has calmed down, or I'm sorry, the sweetness has showed up, and the bitterness is calmed down, and the woodiness has calmed down. It's become a little bit more complex of a pour. Ooh, okay. There's like a nuttiness that's showing up. Boop, boop. There's like a nuttiness that's shown up with this. This is the one that has been sitting out for a while. So this Big Red Pick might have some nutty notes as we water it down. Another 6 drops. I'm just going to keep doing this until I feel like stopping. until I get rip-roaringly drunk. Probably not. It's not really my style. I like having a couple drinks. What's that? Somebody said something. I don't know. Okay. After this, I'm going to go grill a steak for my birthday. So I have to be able to stand up.
Don't forget you have to grill.
I know. I have to grill. Did she mention I have to grill? Thank you all, by the way, for sticking with me. In the top corner of my screen, I can see how many people are watching this thing. And it's been really steady Eddie at 8. And I'm really glad to have all 8 of you here. Thanks so much for joining me and supporting me. If you're not already, please consider joining the Patreon. Please consider subscribing. Uncle Dave, 77, and you don't even need a garbage can full of Kool-Aid. Yeah, man, that's what you do with that. Some of that Everclear, man, that stuff was fucking lightning. And I've had some mystery jars full of clear liquor that were moonshine that were probably approaching this, and they needed something. Usually what they would do is add Jolly Ranchers to the jar to sweeten it. So yeah, there's some ways to make some make something you can actually consume, but it's not good. But this is actually good. This 77%, and I could still drink this just right out of the glass. And keep in mind, this is a glass that's designed to target and put all of that ethanol right in your face. If you put this in a rocks glass, you'd be fine, I think. Now, some people are not as comfortable with high proofs. I love high proofs. Higher the better as far as I'm concerned, which is part of why I bought this. But, you know, I think that there's a lot of good high proof whiskeys that are much hotter than this, that are honestly about 20% weaker in terms of alcohol content. That might go back to being light whiskey, but shake my beard. Having too much fun. Okay. The noses are getting weird now, guys. This has gotten sour on me. Oh, fuck. Okay. Both of those have gotten sour on me in not a good way. Oh, the Houston Barrell. Oh, fuck. The Houston Bourbon Society's pick has gotten really good. Oh, Will, I hope everyone's drinking along with you, because I sure am. I had a couple. I know a lot of people were really looking after this pick. This was a hotly contested pick here in Indiana, and people were grabbing it off the shelf as fast as they could. I'm hoping some of those people that grabbed those bottles have joined us in tonight and are drinking this along with us. If not, they're missing out, man. This is a fun thing to do. Again, thanks all for joining me. Oh, man. God, the Houston Barrel Society pick. Oh, okay. Good question, Will. When I say sour, I'm actually referring to a sour note. Let me try to give you some more on that, because that's a really good question. Because when I'm talking about sour, there is a specific smell and taste to that that I haven't really dug into very much. Because there are different kinds of sour, right? One of the most common types of sour in whiskey that's not made correctly is a vegetation note. Sometimes I'll say vegetal on the show, and what I'm really generally referring to then is herbal, earthy, things that smell like vegetation, but not a sour note. Think of sauerkraut. That kind of smell is a real problem in whiskey. That's not what I've got here, but if you smell that, I probably wouldn't take a sip, to be quite frank. At least not 2 sips. I might take 1 sip just because I want to say I did. But the sour note on this is It's sort of like it's a sour apple note, but it's not. It's not quite artificial, and it's also not like a naturally soured apple. It's like an apple that you intentionally made sour with some sort of technique. If you've ever had sour cherries, it's that kind of sourness, which I know isn't particularly helpful. But there's a definite sweet sour funk going on with the apple undertone. But I want to get back to this because, my God, something has happened with this Houston Barrel Society pick. It's gotten peanutty. It's gotten sweet. Oh, it's like apples and peanuts. It's like, you know what it's like? You know what this is? I really like this. It's really reminding me of home because when I was a kid, I would always get apple slices and peanut butter as a snack. And that's what I'm getting on this. This smells like home, and it's fucking wonderful. Let's see if it tastes like home. Nope, just tastes like a barrel. Oh, okay. Oh, what happened? Okay. So some things happened. Can you hold this light up?
Got it. Buffalo Trace is on the floor down there.
Yeah, it should be okay. I don't think anything broke.
Well, that's good.
Well, this is a fun live stream, guys.
There's another Buffalo Trace down there.
Yeah, it's okay.
Watch your arms next time, long guy.
So, God, guys. Well, I'm still here. It doesn't appear that any bottles broke. I might have to put some sandbags on these soft boxes to prevent that from happening in the future. There's a lot of bottles on the floor, to be honest with you. We'll have to clean that up later. Thank God glass is strong, right? Fucking A. Okay. Anyway, what was I talking about? The unaged version of this has gotten crazy with now 12 drops of water. The one that's had 2 years, or 2 years, 3 hours. Let's try that. Save that for a super chat future clip. I may have to, man. So, okay. So, the unaged version has gotten really weirdly bitter, like really bitter, and sharp and aggressive. The one that sat out for 3 hours has kind of done about the same as it did after 6 drops. It hasn't changed that much. If anything, it's gotten a little better. There's a mid-palate honey that wasn't showing up before. Finish is quieter. The heat's quieter. It's a lot of good, a lot of positives. From the 6 drops, now 12 drops, 6 more drops, but now 12 drops in the 3-hour open whiskey. I still think, though, my favorite to this point is unadulterated, right out of the bottle, 77%. Let's do 6 more drops and see what happens. Now, why I decided to do 6 drops, I have no idea. It just seemed like a good idea at the time, and so I did it. Obviously, that doesn't always work out for me because I just had a softbox fall in my whiskey collection. But nothing broke. We're still here. Still having a good time. Yeah, let's hope nothing else falls after these 6 drops. No kidding, Trevor. God damn, man. No more birthday surprises like that, all right? Oop. Making a mess. I think you all saw it again, so I'll just do a quick one. If anybody didn't see this before, I want to make sure I say it again. I'm making these. This is a new logo that I've been working on with my girlfriend Yolanda. Cool stuff. She's gonna help me make these into stickers, pins. It's gonna be on all kinds of things. It's gonna be a very prominent logo in my videos. If you join the Patreon before April 1st, you can get access to the stickers and lapel pins and cool stuff with that logo. I'm doing die-cast lapel pins, guys. I'm probably going to lose money on it, and I don't care because I want to make a good product for you all. This is cool stuff. I like it to be cool stuff. I don't want something you're going to pull up and go, oh, I'm never going to use that. No, I want this to be something you wear with pride. And if somebody asks you about it, you say, I'm a member of the Society of Drinking Professionals, and you show them my video. That's what I want this to be. Big ambitions, I know, but as part of the Patreon, as part of your membership, Joe's happy because he's getting one. He knows it. He joined in. I got a couple people I see in the chat that have joined up. I'll tell you right now, if you join up from this live stream, I didn't plan on doing this. If you join from this live stream, any level, you're going to get the lapel pin and the sticker. That's not what it says on Patreon. So when you join up from this live stream, you tell them that you were part of this live stream. You send that as part of the message after you join up. You send me a message, and I'll make sure that you get that too. Now, am I going to lose money on that? Yes, probably I am. But I value you guys. I'm very happy to see all of you here. So I want to make sure that y'all keep coming back, that y'all spread the word. And a couple of y'all that are already here, I might send you something extra too. So 18 drops of water now are in these glasses. This still smells like an apple orchard. Oh, man, what is happening with this? It's gotten really, really like vinegary, like awful sour. God, that's so weird. It's so weird that the one that sat out for 3 hours is not vinegar sour. It's the exact same bottle. It's the exact same distillate. Everything's the same, except this glass sat out for 3 hours, and this one I poured at the beginning of this live stream. And this one it's a little sour, but it's mostly sweetness. It's got the pear note. The cooked pears are still there. It's got a little bit of baking spices. That cinnamon's still there. That ginger's still there I mentioned before. And this is much sharper, much more sour, much more unpleasant. All right, I guess I'm going to taste all these. Here we go. I know I sound so defeated, and I'm sitting here drinking whiskey for an audience, so that's pretty shitty of me. But some of these have not been as pleasant as others, so it can be a little bit grueling. This has still got a lot more barrel bitter than this one. This is muted, sweet. It's taken almost a candied apple profile now with a definite rye in the middle, definite bitterness at the end. Back to this one. Very bitter, very barrel bitter. So far, Trevor, yeah, air and a lot of water is not helping this at all. But this one, it's the exact same distillate. It's left out for 2 hours, 3 hours, 3 hours. And it gets better and better. So my thoughts on this is if you're going to pick up a bottle of this barrel at 77%. If you find this stuff, do I recommend picking it up? That's hard to say. This is, yeah, Joe, that's a good idea. I should label the glasses. This is very interesting. It's very hot, 77%, but it's a $100 bottle. This was $107 after tax. I don't know that I can recommend it at that price point because it is good, it is interesting, but there's not enough to keep me coming back. Straight up 77. Yeah, Trevor, I think you're right a lot of times. The price point on barrel proof stuff can be iffy because, you know, they can't make the profit margins from cutting it, so they're sending the cost back to the consumer. And this stuff that I'm drinking right here, I mean, this is the watered down version. I will say right out of the bottle into the glass, it's pretty good, but I don't know if it's $100 good. You know, I've kind of walked all these down in proof a lot. Now that I've done that, let's go back. Let's go back for one last time to the unadulterated 77% whiskey. $107 for that bottle, so better be fucking good. Man, the nose is better. It's better. The best nose I've had is uncut, straight up, 77% barrel rye. Here we go. No, see, I think that at the end of the day, I think the best flavor I can get out of this whiskey is from the glass where I really enjoyed this with about 6 drops of water in it. But I also really enjoyed this with I enjoyed this with 12 drops. This is you can see the labels. That helps a little bit. This is the fresh in this video pour. I really enjoyed this one with about 12 drops of water. I really enjoyed the 3 hour sitting out one with about 18 drops of water. No, 12 drops of water. 6 drops of water. I enjoyed the 3 hour one with 6 drops of water. I really enjoyed the fresh, just poured with 12 drops of water. I don't particularly enjoy any of them with 18 drops of water. The Houston Bourbon Society still smells the best. Doesn't taste good. I've not been able to make it taste particularly good. The creaminess I was getting out of this, with just a little bit of watered downness, not much, was very good. Yeah, Jack Daniel's barrel proof with a bit of water. I totally get that. Yeah, the single barrel proof Jack Daniel's stuff really, really is good for the value. It's very high proof, but it's I've seen it for $60-$70. It's solid stuff. Even if you're paying more than that, even if you're paying $80 or $90, honestly, like if you want to try a Jack Daniel's that you really like, Jack Daniel's single barrel proof, hard to beat. I don't know that I would buy this again. I think if I found another bottle of this for the same price, I would probably pass on it. If they could get the price down on this, I would probably buy it again. If you can get this to about $80, I would pay $80 for this 77 proof rye, 77% rye, 154 proof. Is that right? Yeah, damn close. 153.94. Woo-hoo. So, what have we learned today? Who knows? I've learned that you can do some interesting things with some very high proof whiskey. 77% is not all that it's cracked up to be, but it doesn't have to be super crazy hot. It doesn't have to be, kick your ass and beat your face in spicy. The light whiskey can have interesting flavors that can be pulled from the barrel, and some that are not pulled from the barrel. I suspect that those light whiskeys, first off, I do suspect they were light whiskey, but second off, I suspect that those light whiskeys had the the apple flavors and the pear flavors, not from the barrel, but from the distillate. So that did remain, and that's part of why they were not neutral grain spirits, aka vodka. Vodka is supposed to be flavorless. Cut that proof down a little bit in your distilling process, and you get light whiskey. Cut it down even more, you get regular whiskey. I think this is a really good pour, but not worth $100 for one bottle. If you can get a chance to taste it, I highly recommend you do. Thank you all for joining. Again, if you join by April 1st and you're part of the Patreon, I've got some cool stuff for you. It looks like my mom is watching and she's confused. Yeah, 18 drops was my total at the very end, but you may have to go back and rewatch some of the things to catch where I liked what. I will say I think that the best part of any of the pours was probably a little bit of water, we'll just say that, in the whiskey that had been out for several hours from Big Red. Which do I like better? I definitely think I prefer Alberta or MGP. That's tough. Alberta cast strength is really, really phenomenal. I haven't had that many MGP ryes. This is a Canadian rye, it says, so I don't think this is MGP, although I initially thought it was. But if they're able to label it Canadian rye whiskey and it isn't MGP, then I've got some interesting research to do, because that seems wrong to me. I think that I probably would prefer Alberta for rye. I really like that cast strength. But if you water it down and you cut it in any way, the Alberta is not doing it for me. I got to go MGP otherwise. And for bourbon, I definitely think I go MGP. A lot of the Canadian whiskey that's not rye whiskey is just not my jam. But at the end of the day, it was a fun experiment. Like I said, thank you all for joining me. If you can, please consider joining the Patreon. If you can't, please subscribe to the video. Click the little bell. You'll get notifications. And like I said, for everyone that's watching this right now, send me a message in the Patreon when you join before April 1st, and I'll make sure that you get taken care of in ways that the general viewer might not be. So just keep that in mind. And I see some of you that I know that are going to be in there. I'll take care of you guys too, because you're already part of it, and I really appreciate that very much from my heart. Wherever my heart is. All right, guys. Keep drinking like professionals. I got to go cook some steak and celebrate my birthday some more. I hope you all enjoyed this. I certainly did. We had our mishaps, but we made it work. So cheers. Let's do this again sometime soon. All right. Bye.